13th, 2020. What's up, everybody? We got plenty to talk about today. We're going to look at a lot of the kind of BS narratives that are in the mainstream media right now. Specifically today, we're going to look at climate change. Now, a lot of people are not buying the mainstream narrative around climate change and that our CO2 emissions are causing all these problems because it's really not an issue. A lot of the most recent science literally states that carbon emissions has next to zero, maybe like 0 to at most 3% to do with anything about the climate change. We know that it's all tied back to the solar catastrophe cycles, right, of the sun in the universe. And the climate is going to change. The Earth's status and the way it's laid out, it will change. There's nothing we can do to stop it. You don't have to stress about it. It's not really going to be an issue for the animals. Over millions of years, the Earth has been able to adapt to climate change because it is cyclical and it does change no matter what we as humans are doing. Now, yes, we pollute and we need to clean that up, but it's not our carbon emissions or anything that we're going to be able to do to reverse this. And they leverage this as a way to scare you and keep you totally worried about stuff. What I want to do is jump over to some articles. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Climate change could destroy half of Earth's animal and plant species in the next 50 years, a disturbing study says. And it goes on, talking about our carbon emissions and this 0.5 degree Celsius of the globe that's going to, change the way these species have to evolve and pushes them to migrate in different directions. Migration has always had to happen. The Earth is going to change, okay? Our shorelines are going to be different. 1,000 years from now than they are today, even 50 years from now than they are today. Yep, we're going to have buildings that are built on the shorelines that are going to flood, other shorelines that are going to recede further away. The climate changes, the Earth's makeup changes, lands shift. That's just part of the Earth we're on. So these type of articles are put out to keep you guys scared. How scared? Well, let's take a look at this. If you just go to Google News and look at climate anxiety, you'll literally get dozens and dozens and dozens of articles. Overwhelming and terrifying, the rise of climate anxiety. Eco-anxiety is overwhelming our kids. Where's the line between education and alarmism? Great question. Everything about the news is alarmism and our public education system. It's all propaganda designed to brainwash our kids into believing these narratives that have pretty horrible agendas behind them. But again, it just continues to go on and on. So I just kind of picked a couple of these articles and look how just ridiculous they are. Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance. Here's why psychologists believe climate change is affecting our youth's anxiety. Again, causing all this, it's our news. It's purposely designed to create this mental health epidemic that we're in right now, and it's manufactured. It is 100% manufactured by the narratives that are exploited and pushed into our children's minds. That's creating this anxiety because this isn't our reality. This is a manufactured reality driven by industry to create behaviors that they want. Okay, they want us to be afraid. They don't want us to reproduce. There's all these horrible eugenic agendas behind climate change. But look, how climate anxiety is shaping family planning, right? People are choosing not to have kids because they're so scared of climate change. Another one. It's unethical for me to bring a child into this world, says a young university graduate that tells ABC's Q&A she's too scared to have children because she is suffering from climate change anxiety. What a freaking joke. Again, guys, this is manufactured fear because this isn't something you really have to be worried about. Do you want to be prepared for as the climate changes? Yes. We're, we're in a solar minimum right now. It has a lot of environmental and health effects, but we're going into grand solar minimum. The next 3 decades are going to be ridiculously cold. They keep calling it the mini ice age. Things are going to get really cold, and yet they continue to talk about global warming, and we're nowhere near where the level that CO2 has been historically in the past when we've had massive growths of life, like growth spurts of life on the planet. It's from high CO2 that type of event happens. Okay, and I'm not saying let's continue to release high levels of carbon emissions to get CO2 levels high to have a big growth spurt in life, but it's going to happen. It's just how the world works. So you can buy into these lies and buy into their fear and have this anxiety and worry about your kids. I mean, one of these articles, I don't remember because I was reading through so many of them, they talk about how they were lying on the floor in the fetal position. Oh, right here. Blah, blah, blah. I read an article that made clear that we need to leave the vast majority of economic fossil fuel reserves in the ground or risk an unlivable world within the lifetime of today's children. Oh, I finished this article curled up in the fetal position around my 8-month-old daughter. For months afterward, my first thought upon awakening was of how her prospects for the future had changed. I had trouble concentrating, and every new data point in terms of temperature predictions was a punch to the gut. Well, you've lived a decade of fear for no reason because you read one article that really got you worried, and it's not based in science. You want to understand the reality of the science. Please do yourself a favor and at least go to these 2 sources. First and foremost, and I've mentioned it before, Suspicious Observer on YouTube or spaceweathernews.com. Wherever, this is one of the best authorities on the real science, and if you watch his videos, he's always pointing to peer-reviewed data out there, the most recent cutting-edge data that talks about how the catastrophe cycles of the universe and the solar cycles of the sun, 100%, almost completely, is what's driving climate change. It's what has always. And so if you go to their playlist, there's the Earth Catastrophe Cycle. I've pointed this one out before. Do yourself a favor and watch it. At the very least, jump into their movies and watch the 3 movies: Climate Forcing, Cosmic Disaster, and Plasma Cosmology. Really start to understand solar science, and you will no longer fear climate change. You'll just understand that it is part of the natural cycles of our Earth, and we have always been able to adapt, and we will adapt again. I'm not saying don't get prepared. You'll do definitely be prepared. Understand, especially on the catastrophe cycle, what could happen, when it could happen, as the magnetic poles are flipping, as well as the solar minimum coming. There's a lot of change, and there's a lot of things we can do to prepare. I'm going to leave that up to you to start doing some of that research. The other place you can go is to my Fear versus Freedom channel and find the They Who playlist. The majority of this playlist is going to be brought to you by James Corbett of the Corbett Report, but he has some really, really well done documentaries that you can, not to understand the science of climate change, but to understand the agendas behind the narrative. Why are they pushing it so hard? Is there really a reason to fear? And are they trying to be heroes and save the world? Or are they trying to leverage this fear, kind of like they do with infectious disease and vaccination, to get you to perform or behave in a certain way? That's what you need to understand. So if you go over to the They Who playlist, or you can go directly to the Corbett Report channel, Corbett Report. The only benefit of doing it over here is I have them kind of laid out in a nice playlist. You're going to want to start with how big oil conquered the world and why big oil conquered the world. Once you get to the why, you really start diving into the climate change agenda, and it starts to become very clear what's going on. And then the post-carbon energy eugenics hoax explained is a good one. Rockefeller medicine is a good one. more about climate change, and they're admitting that the science is bunk science and doesn't actually support their narrative. And then it goes much deeper into, who's actually calling the shots in this world, who's running it. Of course, it is the elite that run industry. And you can really dive into the Bilderberg group. It gets pretty overwhelming, but at least start here. Great place to start, okay? So, climate change, don't buy into it. Don't buy the lies. It's all just BS, another avenue of them to support their eugenic agendas. Moving on. Interesting article, this one actually from a few months ago, showing that a university started looking for what's actually in donated blood, and they found 70% of pure human blood that was ready for transfusion contained Xanax, and pretty high levels of Xanax, which is a very powerful benzodiazepine, anti-anxiety, antidepressant drug. Now, the funny thing is, they went into the study looking for what they believe is dangerous botanicals. Botanicals like plants and plant extracts such as CBD and ginkgo. Like, those are the alarming things to the researchers that they wanted to find in the blood. And this article goes on saying, yeah, we went in looking for these botanicals because it's hard to know how they're going to impact the recipient of the blood. And they find Xanax and like very high levels of cough medicine. And for them, that wasn't a big deal. It was like, yeah, that's there, and it's something we need to be paying attention to. And it was definitely a surprise that it was so prevalent. But what we're really worried about are these botanicals. Oh my gosh, what a joke. Anyway, are we an over-medicated society? Absolutely. 70% of this blood had Xanax in it, which, again, very dangerous benzo. And these benzos can actually change not just the chemical balance of your brain, but the actual structure of your brain. And you become physically dependent on these drugs within the matter of days. 3 to 4 days is all it takes. So really dangerous that this stuff is in everybody's blood, and it's not something people are considering when donating. So again, just something to pay attention to. Now, on to crop science. Oh, what a wonderful breakthrough. Bayer just announced that they have an entire new site of action and a completely new technology in a new herbicide that they're in like phase 2 trials on and hoping to have out and ready to go in the next 5 to 10 years. Great. Like, we're not poisoned enough, right? So it says they have a new herbicide with a brand new site of action molecule in the works for crops, of course, including corn and soybeans. It's also using genetic or gene editing in conjunction with conventional breeding and transgenic technology to develop short stature corn. So we continue to play God, create these freaking foods so that we can poison the crap out of our people and profit like crazy from it. So the new herbicide site of action. This is a brand new molecule that offers effective control of several herbicide-resistant grasses, and they continue to evolve and become resistant to their toxins. So instead of just learning how to farm organically, we're going to create more and more poison to spray on the crop. It won't debut anytime. Bayer's aiming at the chemistry hitting the market in the late 2020s. So it's coming, guys. If you don't think you're swimming in enough poison, just give it a few more years and you will be drowning in it. The short stature corn. So they officially announced the firm is also using gene editing to develop short stature corn in addition to conventional breeding and transgenic technologies. It's going to be shorter, so it's less of a wind target, stronger due to compressed internodes, greater resistance to green snap. It goes on, just these stupid reasons. And then last but not least, they're super, super duper excited about their triple stacked soybean that's going to be launched. So Bayer's officials say the Extend Flex system increases the control spectrum from 350 to 375 weeds over Extend soybeans that tolerate dicamba and glyphosate. So this is what's currently being used in the market is the double stacked dicamba and glyphosate strains that are out there. They add that the system's dicamba formulation offers 14 days of residual activity for weeds not yet emerged. Prices have not been finalized for Extend Flex, but everyone's going to be forced to buy it because now they're going to be spraying all these different pesticides on it, and all the neighboring farms are going to either risk their crop being destroyed or being forced into buying the new seed. So they'll be forced into buying this new seed just like everybody else. You have to understand that the reason that 95% of the soy and like 95% of the corn are GMO is because farmers were forced into it. They couldn't keep their crop alive because of the overspray and drift from these pesticides destroying their crop, so they have to buy that seed so that they can be profitable at all. In the works later this decade is a stack that includes tolerance to, look at this soup that's going to be sprayed on the crops: glyphosate, dicamba, glufosinate, HPPD inhibitor, and 2,4-D, which again is the active ingredient in Agent Orange. And by 2030, it'll be a 6-way stack: glyphosate, dicamba, glyfosinate, HPPD inhibitor, 2,4-D, and a PPO inhibitor herbicide. Wow, what a breakthrough. We can spray tons of poisons on our food and it'll still survive, and then we get to eat it. Man, Bear, you're doing some great work. Keep it up, guys. Sarcasm. Don't do it. We need to get away from this. This is disgusting. We need to have a voice, and we need to let them know that this is not okay. Here's their page for it. Coming soon. XtendFlex soybeans. Control the flexibility. Here's what you get: triple stacked soybean trait with tolerance to dicamba, glyphosate, and now glufosinate. All combined together. Can you imagine what this is going to do? Not only to your gut microbiome, but to your endocrine system, your hormone production, your central nervous system. It's coming, folks. It's coming. If you haven't already started to get into the discipline of avoiding these products, you need to learn how to do it. Go organic, go non-GMO, watch Flav City so that you can get tips on how to shop and avoid all this nastiness. Just point out some studies about some of these, because we've already looked at glyphosate. You know it is very, very, very dangerous. No matter what the BS bot science they're trying to say is okay, it's not. Dicamba affects sex steroid hormone levels and mRNA expression of related genes in adults, rare, minio, whatever, at environmentally relevant concentrations. The results of the mRNA analysis suggest that changes in steroid hormone-related gene expression could serve as regulatory mechanisms to maintain sex hormone homeostasis. Overall, dicamba exposure could result in histological lesions, plasma VTG increases, changes in sex hormone levels, and alterations of hormone-related gene expression. Therefore, dicamba should be considered to be potential endocrine disruptor. Obviously it is. It is an actual endocrine disruptor. All of these pesticides are. They're destroying us. Well, what about glufosinate, which is the triple stack? So you're going to get glyphosate, dicamba, and glufosinate, which has been around for a while. Glufosinate is a common herbicide with neurotoxic effects leading to seizures, convulsions, and memory loss. Glufosinate indirectly induces glutamic toxicity by inhibiting glutamate synthesis in the astrocytes. Here we studied the acute toxic effects of glufosinate-based herbicide in rat optic nerves at 3 doses. Blah, blah, blah. It does these. Interleukins are highly produced. The results established that glufosinate-based herbicides significantly increased interleukin 1b and CFOS immunopositivity in the optic nerve. These results suggest that commercial formulations of glufosinate acutely affect the optic nerve. We know it causes seizures, neurological damage. Holy cow. Let's continue to spray it on our food. Glufosinate aerogenic exposure induces glutamate and interleukin-1 receptor dependent lung inflammation. Chronic exposure caused moderate lung inflammation and enhanced airway hyperreactivity with significant increased airway resistance. In conclusion, GLA aerosol exposure causes glutamate signaling in the IL-1R dependent pulmonary inflammation with airway hyperreactivity in mice. So we're going to have lung problems, brain problems, hormone problems. It's coming, folks. Characterization of seizures induced by acute exposure to organophosphate herbicide, glufosinate ammonium. Again, more about the seizures from these pesticides. And I feel horrible for the people that live in agricultural areas surrounded by these farms, because guess what? They're breathing it all freaking day. And it's in their water, and it's in our water, and it's everywhere. And it's only going to get worse because we sit back and let this happen. And then we're just continue to get sick and wonder why. But I eat a healthy diet, even though it's all poison. Potential impact of the herbicide 2,4-D on humans and ecosystems. The recent findings indicate urgent need to further explore the fate, accumulation, and continuous low-level exposure that impacts on the environment to generate reliable database, which is key in drafting new regulations and policies to protect the population from further exposure. Forget it. There is no protection. We're out and they don't give a crap. This was just out yesterday. Time. New study shows that when it comes to pesticides in kids, the EPA has looked the other way. They don't give a crap. So this goes on and talks about how in the Clinton administration and in the Obama administration, they passed regulatory laws that should have made it safer with more restrictions around pesticide use, but they haven't enforced it at all. And none of the behaviors have changed. And so it basically states here at the end that with all of the legislation that had been passed over the past couple decades, the EPA has clearly been given the power to protect children's health from pesticides, says Olga Nadenko, Vice President of Science Investigations at the Environmental Working Group. But the EPA should be able to fully use this authority without waiting for additional instructions if the EPA leadership decides to do so, but they haven't and they won't. They just proved that by reapproving glyphosate as safe and something that can be sprayed on our food. So again, guys, the only person looking out for you is you, if you are. Don't go blindly putting your trust in these authorities, in these regulatory agencies. They do need to exist, and they do have some level of goodness, but overall, they'll do whatever's best for industry, not for you. Speaking of GMOs, the Impossible Burger is changing the debate over GMO. No, it's not. GMOs are disgusting. There's there's Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger. One is GMO and one is non-GMO. Let me tell you what, they're both garbage. They're a soy-based product using genetically modified crop, and the ones that's non-GMO, it doesn't matter. They're still using gene-edited heme, right? In addition to GMO soy protein, one of the key ingredients is heme, a molecule the company says makes its burgers bleed. It gives it that bleed look when you cook it and cut into it. So they're using a genetically modified ingredient, this heme product, to give it that bleed and kind of meaty flavor. This is a total disgusting, just processed piece of garbage. And not only that, but we know, and I pointed this out in one of my other videos, a lot of the science is we really need to be cutting back exposure to soy. Not just because it's high in estrogen, it's a phytoestrogen or an exogenous estrogen. It's just a disgusting, overly consumed food that's having a lot of deleterious effects on our health. So one of the ridiculous quotes out of this, let's see if I can find it. This is such BS. The reason that about 95% of the U.S. soy crop is genetically engineered is precisely because farmers, food makers, and consumers have confidence in the safety and nutrition of GMO soy. That couldn't be further from the truth. The real reason 95% of the U.S. soy crop is genetically engineered is because, number one, it's subsidized by the government. It's easier to grow because they can just spray the pesticides on it, and it's more profitable, but definitely not because there's confidence in the safety of it. Absolutely not. There is no confidence in the safety of the GMO crop. It is harming you. Most people don't even know that they're consuming it, and those that do probably do so with a little bit of anxiety. I'll I'll always go organic over GMO any day because I understand and learn about the toxic effects and witness it every day in my kids of what this does. And so moving forward, we stick with organic. Guys, I'm just trying to point out all these risks that are out there that you have the power to avoid. You simply change the way you shop. Just like my last video said, change the way you shop. Begin that healthy lifestyle. Okay, lastly, I just want to touch on some of the cool microbiome news. So this article is in Inverse. It says the microbiome and mental health. A new study links the gut bacteria to personality traits. So those is it extrovert? So the opposite of the introvert, right? The more social, out there kind of fun-loving people have a much broader variety of bacteria in their microbiome. Those with autism and they're more introverted and also that suffer with anxiety and depression have a very narrow spectrum of bacteria. And there are specific bacterias. Certain bacteria species were more abundant in individuals who were more social. Those that belong to the genera Akkermansia, Lactococcus, and Oceolaspira. They note that previous research found that children with autism also have a reduction in Lactococcus and Oceolaspira. That suggests that the bacteria may be linked to social difficulties in autism. Great article. I hardly suggest you go read it. We'll just hit the abstract real quick. The gut microbiome has a measurable impact on the brain, influencing stress, anxiety, depressive symptoms, and social behaviors. This microbiome gut-brain axis may be mediated by various mechanisms, including neural, immune, and endocrine signaling. And you bet there's more. But the fact that we know that the gut-brain axis is mediated by the immune system tells you right there that vaccines cause autism because we're manipulating the immune system, we're disrupting the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome and vaccines do not work well together, and this is triggering stress, anxiety, depression, autism, you name it. The mental health crisis that they're jumping on and leveraging as a way to control you and your fear all stems back to your gut microbiome, to medications, vaccines, you name it. The composition and diversity of the gut microbiome is investigated with respect to human personality. Using regression models to control possible co-founding factors, the abundances of special bacteria are shown to be significantly predicted by personality traits. Diversity analysis of the gut microbiome revealed that people with larger social networks tend to have a more diverse microbiome, and suggesting that social interactions may shape the microbiome community of the human gut. In contrast, anxiety and stress are linked to reduced diversity and altered microbiome composition. Together, these results add a new dimension to our understanding of personality and reveal that the microbiome gut-brain axis may also be relevant to behavioral variations in the general population, as well as cases of psychiatric disorders. So another great article about how our gut microbiome is really, our brain is our gut. The brain and the gut are one. Okay, they call it the second brain, but it's all connected. It's all one. So when you have that gut feeling, you should go with it because that is your brain telling you, hey, do this. That's a valid feeling. It's legit. Got a gut feeling I should stay away from GMOs. One last article. We all know this. Breast is best. Components of the human breast milk enhances cognitive development in babies. No freaking duh. So really what they're finding is they wanted to know why breastfed babies are so much smarter. And within that first month of life, their specific carbohydrate, oligosaccharide 2FL, that's found in maternal milk positively influences neurodevelopment. I'm going to suggest you guys go and read this. It's fantastic. Of course, you guys need to always focus on mothers out there. Set the goal to do breastfeeding if you can. If not, you can look into wet nurse. If not, I highly suggest organic or at least non-GMO goat formula. Cabrita is a great brand. Holly is another great brand. Get the cleanest, most natural source of nutrition for your baby. If you cannot breastfeed, go to the next best. But breast is best, guys. More and more science is coming out and showing that. All right, so that's it for today. I think those are some pretty cool topics, things that you guys can jump into and start looking into. Hope you all have a fantastic Valentine's Day. I'm hoping I won't do a video. We'll see, but I just want to focus on family. So anyway, thanks again for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know if there's anything you can add about these specific topics in the comments. So yeah, remember, the more you know, the less you fear. Knowledge is power. Love you guys.